I don't know how much rain we had today. I need to go check my rain gauge. Is
About an inch and a half, I think.
that
We
it?
got, my gauge showed 3.2, but my neighbor next door showed 4.6. So we're trying to figure it out.
Just split the difference.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Mine may be a little on the protected side. I don't know.
Yeah, mine's probably pretty accurate. It's right out in the open without any trees over it. So I'll have to run out and check it before it gets too dark. So to kick things off, last time we went over how to get pictures into Lightroom so that we could use them. And this time we're just going to go over some basic tools. There is a whole lot to unpack here. So we may find that the 1 hour is not enough. And if that's the case, we'll just roll it into another session and do more later, because I don't want to give too much information and get everybody confused. If you have the raw files and you haven't imported them yet, go ahead and do that. If you have the JPEGs and you have Lightroom open, go ahead and put those in. But I am going to show the difference between what you can do with a JPEG versus what you can do with a raw file. So does anybody need any time to get those pushed into Lightroom, or you guys got it?
I didn't have a chance. I just downloaded it about 30 minutes ago. I've been tied up.
No worries. I'm like that Kermit the Frog meme where he's running around with the waving his arms and following around in circles between 2 weeks of graduation and people and trying to get work and photo stuff.
I hear you.
It was news to me. I thought you had to have the raw. I didn't even realize that Lightroom would work with a JPEG. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so when I shoot sports, I shoot in JPEG only. And there's multiple reasons I do that. One is because your camera has a buffer on it. So it'll tell you how many pictures you can get while the computer system inside your camera is processing those photos, and you get less pictures before it starts to really slow down or lock up because it's buffering trying to get those pictures on your drive if you're shooting in RAW versus if you're shooting in JPEG. So if I shoot in JPEG and I wanted to just hold the button down and spray it, I could take pictures with that R5 for I don't even know how long. I think the most I've played with so far is like 95 pictures in a row, and it just blows them out of the water.
Are you shooting R5 now?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I'm got the money. I'm getting ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah, it's a good rig. I have found a glitch. I have talked to Canon, and I have talked to a lot of people on DP Photo Review and in a couple of the Facebook groups I'm on. I was able to replicate the glitch, and the glitch occurs with the R5 in electronic shutter mode with the converter for the DSLR lens and my 70-200. I have not tried it with any other lenses, and I have not tried to replicate it with the mirrorless lens yet, because I had a job that a friend wanted me to take some pictures. Luckily, it was a friend. And like the one picture that she wanted me to get, I didn't get because the camera had the glitch. And I thought I was hoping that I could recover the pictures off the disc. So I swapped the cards, went back to shooting, got the rest of the day, came home, couldn't recover it. Started talking to Canon and a bunch of other people, and there's a shutter catch issue with the R5. I did the firmware update. They thought maybe it was because of the settings that I was using with the specific lens and the specific converter and the electronic shutter. So they told me to try to replicate it, and I was able to replicate it. So to the drawing board I go to see if I can make it happen with more. But basically it didn't record any pictures.
Oh, nice.
For the time that I held the button down, the entire set of pictures that I thought I was taking, I did not get. Not the end of the world. There were like 50 people there with their phones doing video and pictures. So everybody got part of it. And I told my friend I wasn't going to charge her, and I gave her 400 pictures on top of the one that she wanted, and we're square. But could have been a lot worse if I'd been shooting a wedding or something. And
Oh, yeah.
so reason number 530,002 that I don't like to shoot weddings. So onward and upward. So I was going into why I shoot JPEGs versus RAWs. And when I shoot sports, I don't want to edit all my pictures. I just want to fix the color if I need to and pull some shadows and drop some highlights. And if it's not perfect, I don't worry about it. And if you remember from the meeting, James Mitchell had that picture of the flamingos, that black and white, that we tried to save in the critique, and there just wasn't anything there to save. And even if it would have been a raw file, we probably still would not have been able to save it because the whites were just so gone. But we probably could have made a lot better progress than what we did had it, since it was just a JPEG and there just isn't a lot of information there. So to get started, let me minimize my presets because we don't need these. I do make a lot of presets. So, all right. So I've got my pictures over here in Lightroom. We're going to start with, this one. Oh, my computer's going to spin. Fun. So your raw file is essentially, like you guys know, I'm sure, is your negative. And each camera's kind of got their own colors that tend to oversaturate or look more brilliant than others. Canon, it's red. Sony, it's blue, and Nikon is usually on the warm side like Canon. But Canon definitely blows out the oranges and reds a lot more than Nikon. But if you're shooting in RAW, that's not an issue. If you're shooting in RAW, you're good because you can change everything, just like you're developing by any means, I have never developed my own film, so I'm making an assumption. You can change everything and make it the way you need it as you're developing your film in Lightroom. If you shoot it in JPEG, you're really going to have a lot of work put in to get the colors where you need them if something is oversaturated. And it's certainly doable, and the more you do it, the quicker you get. So this is a raw file that I'm working with, and I took this through a window at my hotel that I was staying at. And you can see that I'm, if you have your histogram over here on the right side, I'm in the develop module. So I'm in number 2. When we were doing our imports, we were in the library module. So we're going to move to the develop module from here. And I've got my histogram showing. It's the first thing at the top. I just pull the arrow down so I can see it. And this tells me if I'm properly exposed and if my colors are properly exposed. And it kind of gives me, you know, my highlights. There's two little triangles up here in the corner. The one on the left is your blacks, and the one on the right is your whites. So if you're working with a picture where you want to make the entire background black, this is a real handy little tool. And we did this in at the meeting on the last one. I think Arnold had a picture of a flower that was supposed to have a complete total black background, and I said it looks like there's something in the background under the, or like maybe the black wasn't the same that they painted the canvas with, and I figured it out when I came home when I played with it. But really cool tool to know if you've got highlights or your highlights blown out or your blacks are completely gone. So you always want to have your histogram up because it does give you information. And fun fact, if you decide to go and print an image and you don't look at your histogram and you don't have your monitor calibrated and your monitor is bright and the picture looks good to you, and then you go to print it and it turns out darker than you thought it would, look at your histogram when you get home. Better yet, look at it before you order the picture, because you'll save yourself some money and some gas. If you underexpose the image and then you go to print it, it's going to print dark, and then you're going to get it and think, well, why did it print so dark? But then if you look at your histogram, you're going to see that it was dark, in fact, and your monitor maybe was misleading you. So, all right, histogram. The next set of tools you have under the histogram in this current Lightroom Classic is you've got your crop tool, your heal and clone tool, which is the Band-Aid. You've got Redeye removal. I rarely use this, mostly because it really just turns the eye black. So if I end up with Redeye, which I do sometimes if I shoot motocross at night with a flash and they look at me and they've got clear goggles on, I'll get Redeye. I don't necessarily use the Redeye to fix it because I don't just want black marbles staring at me. So I don't use that one, but you can. It does have its benefits. And then you've got this mask tool, which is really cool because there's lots of things that are now in it. And this is a big change for Lightroom, and it's a pretty fantastic change because you have a select subject, which we'll use in another image. Select the sky, the brush tool, linear gradient, radial gradient, color range, luminance range, and depth range.
Hang on a second. So yeah. What on the modules on the right side, we're in develop module, and then coming down the right side, which of one of the ones are we in? Basic?
We're right above the basic. So if I shrink these so you can't see them all, right above basic, you've got these 4 little icons.
Oh, okay, I'm with you. Okay, I got them. All right, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Hey, Pat,
Yeah.
got a question, and
Sure.
this just came up tonight. On the crop tool, on the crop icon, and I end up going to Luminar. So like and you can see this on the camera, if I want to crop it up, Luminar, and I take it from the bottom here or the top, it'll draw it in.
Like this?
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. And like taking it from the bottom up. Yeah, see, when I do it on mine doesn't do that.
Okay.
And our nephew was over and he was borrowing my equipment and we were talking about that. He says, "Oh, you did? That's like, it's like, I have to go to Luminar to do that." So, because I'll take it from the corner and drag it down, but I can't take it from the middle, from top to bottom, and get it to equally crop in.
Okay, so when you have your crop tool selected,
that's the lock.
And yeah, there's a right over here on the right-hand side of your lock of this box, it pops down. There's a padlock.
Oh, okay.
And if that padlock is open, then you can.
Okay.
It won't constrain it, but
okay.
But if you lock it, it will.
It'll constrain. Okay.
So there is a little bit of a fun thing that happens here because let me get out of this and reset. So if I click on my crop tool and then I unlock the padlock and then I crop it to where I want it and then I hit enter to set my crop. When I go back to my crop tool, it's still unlocked. It does what's called a sticky setting.
Right. See, mine does that too. But see, I've always been an unlock then.
Right. So
when I'll take it from the corner up, and then I go back in and maybe readjust it a little bit, it'll still be what we're seeing on your screen here.
And that's an Adobe thing. The sticky settings. Adobe likes sticky settings.
Mm-hmm.
So if you notice that your crop tool is doing that.
Yeah, and it is.
Yep. Go ahead and change the lock, and then
okay.
And then what you do from there is I will usually reset so that I can go back to the original size of the image.
Okay.
You know, click on as shot, and it'll bring me back to where I started.
Yeah.
Now I closed my lock. But that was not the first thing I did. The first thing I did, if you remember, I opened it, right? So let's reset. So the last time I used it, I had it unlocked and then I left it that way. And then when I reopen it, it's still unlocked. So if I go to make a move, right? And then I go, oh, I forgot my lock is open, and I lock it and I tell it to go back to as shot, and then I fix it the way I want it and move it around, and then, okay, that's where I want it, and I hit enter. The sticky remembers that I closed it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm closed. So just if that's one thing to know about some of the tools is if you make a change, your change will potentially stay the way you used it last.
Yeah.
So if it's not working because of, because of the way if you get into it and it's being funky, that's probably what it is. It's probably your lock tool. So you'll be good. All right. So that's the thing about the crop tool, and we'll go through these because I'm going to touch on these first anyway. You can also constrain to the image. So for instance, I can turn this. If I don't constrain to the image, it's gonna, in this area, it's gonna be fine. But
does that prevent you from getting those gray borders?
yeah.
Okay, I wonder what that. Okay.
You also have a ruler tool here, which is a really handy tool to have if you are trying to get your horizon straight, because the horizon is a lot of times, you look at a picture that somebody else took or that you took, and I don't know, I think I'm just crooked. Everybody jokes that my head's not on straight. That's what my chiropractor told me.
That's what I said, your chiropractor said that.
Yeah, my chiropractor told me that. I think he's right. But when I take pictures, even if I'm looking through my camera and I have my grid on, when I get home, my photos are never straight. It drives me absolutely crazy. My horizon is always crooked. So if I want to fix my horizon, I can do this and try to get it where I want it. But the easiest way to do it for me is next to angle, you have this little ruler that's in a circle, and you can just click on that and it brings this ruler over here. And then you can just find something that's going to give you, if this was water, you could click across the water. And you just click one point, hold the left mouse button down, drag it across and let go, and it straightens it for you. So it takes a little bit of the guess out. It's easier than trying to get it this way and get it the way you want it.
So what I do is I just go into transform and hit auto.
And you can do auto.
9 times out of 10, I like that. 1 time out of 10, I'm there like, what the hell were you thinking?
There's also the full version, and we'll get to that on my portrait picture because it's kind of fun. There's several different ways to fix your horizon. If you're going to crop an image, you're already in it, and this one is pretty handy. And if there's not a bunch of other stuff you have to fix, that kind of makes life a little bit easier. I'm working from top down because you notice I just did the building. So if I click on my building and say, well, this line here on this building should be straight up and down based on my image, that's not really accurate because of the perspective of the angle that I'm taking the picture compared to all the buildings and the distance away that they are and the lens that I'm using, because I am getting some lens distortion.
Yeah, but when I hit auto on some of that, it really sends it cattywampus. So.
Oh yeah, 1 time out of 10, it really does. But I'll take the 9 out of 10 and do it, because I'm like her. I'm there like every time I do it, I said, well, no, now it's crooked the other direction.
Hey, I just blame it on my glasses, okay?
You also have to think about the perspective. If you go to New York City and you take a picture of the Rockefeller Center and you're standing on the ground and you're shooting up, that building is going to be all kinds of out of whack when you go to look at it on the computer. And there's not really anything you can do to keep the whole thing in the picture and make it look straight up and down, because from a real perspective, it's not straight up and down. No. Because of just the angle and the lines and everything just goes together because of a distance. It's just like back in 8th grade art class where they had you put a dot in the middle of the page and then draw lines to it from the corners. Everything is a perspective. So you have to keep that in mind when you're straightening your images, that you don't want to get rid of the perspective, because that does add to the composition factor of the image. So we've got the crop tool. The next thing we have is the heal and clone tool. And let me turn that off. I'm gonna demonstrate this with a different picture, because I get quite a bit of dust on my lenses, on my sensor, even though I try not to switch lenses while I'm on the track. I always use a chip brush to get the dirt or off around my lens and where they join, and I always hold my camera face down. I still get dirt on my sensor. I clean everything. It's just the nature of the game, but if you want to see if you have sensor dust and you want to make sure that when you get ready to print this picture, you don't end up with a photograph with a weird looking dot. This is a cool technique that the heal and clone tool can do. First of all, the heal and clone tool is just like it is in Photoshop for the most part. There are a couple of quirky little things. Down here in the lower left, right above your thumbnail library, you will see tool overlay.
So wait a minute, which one is this? The Band-Aid looking one?
Yep, this is the Band-Aid.
Okay.
All right, so if you click on the Band-Aid, down in the lower left corner of any image that you have open, as long as you have your toolbar open, can everybody see the tool overlay in their toolbar? Should be right down here.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have that, the tool overlay normally, factory default, I say, is auto. And what that means is I've got my cursor and I want to paint over something to clone it or heal it. It's showing me the tool overlay. So it's showing me where I'm painting. And when I let go, it's going to show me where it's selected based on Lightroom's algorithms that says this is most likely the best place to grab that's going to look like the area that you want to cover up and blend the best. And this makes it hard to see everything that you've painted over if it's a very small area. If it's a big area, it's pretty easy to see it, but if it's small, it's a lot harder. So for instance, if I wanted to cover up this person down here, it's really hard to see through that dot to make sure that I got rid of the person and it looks the way I want it to. Now, if you do one of these and you don't like it, you can right click on the little dot and delete it. And then it gives you that cool little cartoon cloud and it disappears, which is also a new feature, the cartoon cloud. So if you're going to use a tool overlay, I usually put never, because I want to be able to see what I'm doing and I want to be able to see what it looks like. And it's still not quite right, but that's pretty close. And
are you on clone or heal?
right now I'm on clone.
Okay.
So the other thing that Lightroom did, and this is another neat tool for those of us that should be wearing glasses and aren't. It used to be just a zoom and you could change it to like 100% or fit or fill. And they added this other feature where you can, over here on the left under your navigator pane, you can change to different levels of zoom. So if you're working on a laptop, that might be really handy versus if you're working on a 40-inch TV screen. I don't know why anybody do that, but if you really need to zoom in Lightroom, you can. And there's a lot of shortcuts. The Z key on your keyboard will zoom you in and out from the fit to whatever you have your settings at. And you can pick the area by moving your mouse around this navigator. Everybody see where I'm at on the left side, left upper tool? So I can move this around and tell it where I want to zoom. And I can change how close it's going to zoom in by just pushing the Z key while I'm looking at it. So like if I wanted to get rid of the mole on Les's neck, I could use my tool.
So wait a minute, when I hit my Z, it zooms in.
Yep.
And when I hit it again, it zooms back out.
Yep.
So,
So
that's it. That's the only, it's just an in or out.
It's an in or out. Let me go back to this picture that everybody else has. Okay, so, oops. So if I want to zoom out, because right now I have my zoom set to 200. So when I let go of it, it's zooming into 200. So if I put it back.
Oh, wait a minute. So where are you doing that? Under view or something?
All right, so it's under navigator on the left side. See at the top, you've got.
Oh, okay, there. I see it. I see it.
So if you change your navigator to fit 100%, and then this next one, you can change.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah.
And then when you toggle your Z, it's going to zoom in based on that 100% right next to this.
Okay, I got you. Okay, thanks.
So that's a neat feature. That another neat feature that Adobe added was the different zooms. So we'll go back to this one. So if I'm going to use my clone, my recommendation on clone and heal both is, unless you're doing something really, really, really precise, use as much feather as you can, because on a lot of these tools, because the more feather you use, the less noticeable your changes are. So if I want to fix something, like say I had a piece of dust in this, and do you guys know some of your shortcut keys, like for making paintbrushes bigger? If you're, I'm gonna email the shortcut stuff out, but your brackets right next to the letter P on your keyboard, you've got a bracket for the left side and a bracket for the right side. So the left bracket makes your tool brush, makes your paintbrush in Photoshop and Lightroom smaller, and the right one makes it bigger. So if I had a dust spot, or say I didn't like this little white puffy cloud right here, right here, I could get rid of that. I could make my tool smaller, so I'm not, because you really want to be as precise as possible. I could zoom in and I could paint over it, and I'm showing my tool so that you can see where I'm at on the screen. And when I let go, that little white puffy cloud is gone. It's still there a little bit. And it is picking up. Let me change auto there. Now you can see where it's coming from. So if I move this over here, I'm moving where it's selecting from. And that is another nice feature, because sometimes Lightroom thinks it knows what you want, but it doesn't always get it right. So when I let go of that, now my little white puffy cloud is gone, the one that I didn't want. But let's say that was the last piece of dust that I wanted to get rid of that I can see. The next thing you want to do is down next to the tool overlay, there is a little box with the clone and heal brush still open called Visualize Spots. And if you check mark that box, it turns your image into a sketch.
Wait a minute, where are you now?
down here on the lower left, where I turned the tool overlay off.
Oh, okay, I got it. Yeah.
Okay, so the visualize spots. So if you've got dust spots on your sensor, this is how you're going to see them, because they're going to show up. And you can turn this down to where it's, if you go all the way to the left, you're essentially giving yourself a black and white sketch. And you can see the dust spots because they will show up as white specks. These right here are clouds, so I'm going to leave them. I know they're clouds just from looking at the picture. And then as you bring it up, you can see different things. Like this is that other little tiny white piece of cloud that I didn't get rid of, that I didn't particularly like. Now it's gone. All I did was run my tool over it again because I could see it really well in this image. So this is a way to check for spots. You can do this with the image. If it has a black background, you can do it. If it has a white background, you can do it. If it has a blue, green, doesn't matter. You're still going to see the spots. All right, so we've got the heal tool. We're pretty good there. Everything's looking good. My camera sensor was pretty clean on this trip, but I think I had it cleaned right before I went. So
one other thing I'll note, for instance, with the clone and heal tool that's open, if you have a mouse with a wheel on it, you can resize the tool by rotating that wheel one way or the other. And that's a real handy way to do it. It also works with the adjustment brush. A lot of people don't have that kind of a mouse, but
yep.
I do.
Yeah, and I have one of these too. So if you guys don't use a mouse like this, they do take a little bit of getting used to, because you don't move your hand stays on the mouse the whole time. and your thumb does all the work and your fingers, but you also have this scroll wheel, and that's what he's talking about. I can change the size of my pointer, my brush, by just rolling the scroll wheel. And I agree, that is really handy. And if you ever want to get really into editing, you can use a pen tablet, and there's settings on the pen tablet that you can use to do that. And that's really handy if you're going to get into, you know, really close detailed work, or if you just like to color. Either way.
Yeah, Wacom is going to take a lot of practice.
Yes. So whether you use a regular mouse now and you've never used a ball mouse and you want to switch, or you use a mouse in general and you want to switch to a pen tablet, it's just like using, like, we just switched software at work, and I keep telling everybody to stop going into the old software because you're comfortable with it. If you're going to switch to a ball mouse from a regular, or from a mouse to a pen tablet, you've just got to put your old device in a drawer and forget that it exists and get used to the new device. Because if you don't, you will always struggle with the new device.
You were talking about the wheel, because I used to have Windows, and I had the wheel on my mouse. I've got a Mac now, and I just sweep across the top and does the exact same thing.
Yep.
Just by simple sweep. It'll enlarge or lower or decrease the size.
Yeah. All right. So the Redeye tool, like I said, I don't really use the Redeye tool, but you can if you have a subject and the subject happens to have Redeye. Let's see. And you want to fix it. You just simply click on one edge of the eye and drag across and expand it, and it finds where the red is, and it makes a neat little black spot. And this one, if you're doing eyeballs on this one, I would really recommend doing the never, because otherwise you can't see the eyeball under the tool because it's so tiny. Again, I don't use this one. Bruce, do you ever use the Redeye tool in Lightroom?
I don't ever have the need to, but if I did, I'm sure I would use it. But no, I don't use it.
It does do the pet eye, and you can add a catch light.
Right.
Which is kind of funny, but if I run into that situation, and again, for me, it's usually because I'm shooting a flash and the motorcycle rider looks right at me and gets blinded, and I feel bad for him, but I get red eye. You know, it is what it is, and I usually don't fix it in Lightroom. I usually, if I'm gonna fix it, I either use this tool, the mask tool, and I fix the color, or I go, if it's really something that I need to spend time on, I'll go into Photoshop. But typically I will use the brush tool over the Redeye tool, because I can change the color with the brush tool, and I'll show you that. So going back to our cityscape.
Question.
Yes.
So I'm looking at your picture of your boy hanging in the barn here.
Yep.
And I hit the Z so I can zoom in on his eye, but I'm actually looking at his belt. So how do I get up to his face?
You've got to move in your navigator screen. You've got to maneuver your mouse around so that it centers him.
Oh, over there, I had that little box.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, because that was killing me today. I was trying to edit some photos and I just couldn't get like, what the hell? All right.
Yep.
Okay, you're doing good. Keep going.
Or you just click in the image and the hand tool will appear, and just left click and drag to wherever you need to go.
Yeah, if you don't have your tool selected yet, you
Yeah, I was
can,
gonna say it doesn't. It applied spot removal. Okay, so I gotta have the tool not selected. How do I do that?
you just click at the tool again to unselect it.
Oh, okay. Ah, yeah. Okay.
There you go.
Two
Okay,
ways. Good.
2 ways. All right, so now we're going to move
One.
on to the mask tool. So this one's got some pretty cool stuff in it now with the changes that Lightroom has made. So we're going to go back to the Vegas strip. Maybe
Can
Apparently,
we go back? Can we go back there for a minute? I got distracted real quick.
yeah, back to the
To mask tool.
Okay. on the red
what's
eye
on?
or the mask.
Yeah. It says, okay, it says under new, oh, well. No, go back. Sorry. It says add a new mask. Okay, it says select sky, so you're adding actually a mask to the sky. You're not doing a sky replacement, correct?
No. Okay. So
Okay.
we're going to get into this mask tool because this tool is really cool. And I know I think it was the last 2 classes ago, I did the selection stuff in the meeting as a plan B because our speaker canceled. So these new tools in Lightroom are pretty slick. So if you do select sky, like say you just want to edit the colors in the sky and you want the
Okay.
building left alone, you can select sky in Photoshop. Lightroom does a really good job of selecting the sky. If you really got picky on this, and you would have to, depending on how much change you made, you can see in this image,
That top story.
you can see in this image, let me change my overlay a little bit so it's a little bit more visible.
Yeah, I use green. That bright green is very.
I'm just gonna increase I can use green if you want. That works.
Yeah, but see how I got that top story there of the building?
Yep. So Lightroom selected my sky, but because I have reflections or because your image may have a lot of colors in the items or the subjects that are really close to the sky, you're going to get some bleed. And it does have bleed here. But you can fix that with the way that Lightroom's got it set up now. It's really easy.
Correct.
And I am showing my edits because I want it to show my color overlay, which is down here in the lower left, just like we had in the heal and clone tool. You've got your options here.
Mhm.
You can do your color overlay. You can do image on black and white. So now it's showing me it's black and white down here, but everything else, the sky is in color, which is another way to look at it. Because you can see if I'm going to change anything in this sky and I've got windows that are reflecting that color, I'm probably going to want the changes that I make to the sky to also happen in those reflections. So you don't want to just go in and cover up some of the mask that it put there. You want to use it and see where you end up first. So before I do anything else here, you can see that if I bring yellow into the sky and I release it, it's bringing yellow onto everything. But it's really affecting the reflections and where it selects. But this tool is really nice. And we'll get into more detail with it here in a little bit. So if you change your settings here, you get things, just play with your settings and then hover over your mask. It'll put that black and white back on the part that you didn't select, and you'll be able to see the changes that you made in the sky and what it's doing to the items that it selected around it.
Okay.
And you may not like it because if you notice, if you look right here on the edge of this building, when I hover over the mask, you can see that it's getting kind of, here, let me.
Gets a little halo to it.
Yeah,
when it's drawn out and you're seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah, I'm getting a really weird look right there because
Mhm.
it didn't give me 100% mask next to the building. It's just going off the colors. And you have to be careful when you're editing and changing settings, whether you're going to switch an image to black and white or you're going to work on sharpening or masking or painting, because you might not see it on a screen. Like if you're using a small laptop or a monitor and you look at it from a small scale, but then somebody else looks at it, or you look at it on a different screen, you might see a lot more drastic things that you didn't anticipate being there. So I always recommend when you're making changes, like when I make changes, I don't just swipe everything to the full right and full left. I kind of make them gradually so I can see what's happening. The select subject works really well on people. If you have your background exposed the way you want it, but your people are really dark because you either didn't have your flash set right, or they were backlit and you weren't using a flash because you didn't take one. Maybe you're just doing some pictures while you're out and about. You can select your subject, and on the person, it would work a little bit better. And then you can pull your lights, your shadows, and your highlights out. You'll see on the building, if you look at my building in the background, it pulled some of the sky up with it when I pulled the exposure. So that goes back to, you know, don't make your changes real strong, make them gradually so you can see what's going on. So let me reset this. All right, so you have your brush tool. So before I get too much further into this, I'm going to go into the basic menu. So this is where you make quite a few changes, and this is where I start, and then I kind of merge out from here. So I love the color in this image, but it is super flat because it's a raw. So I've got my histogram pulled up, and I'm going to pull up my exposure a little bit, but I don't want to pull it up too much because I'm going to make some other changes that are going to adjust that, and I can always play with the exposure again later. I'm going to pull my highlights down. And these changes are typically things that you will find you like the way you get a look, and you tend to stick with a look. And if you go through and pull presets from other people, you're going to see that somebody has a look that they like, and every photo that they produce has some sort of look similar to every other photo they make. I like bright, sharp, colorful images. My daughter likes flat, black and white, low color, and my daughter from another mother likes really bright, white. I don't even know how to explain it. Just looks really, everything looks kind of washed out. So everybody's different. So I pull my highlights down, but I don't pull them all the way down. I try to stay -75 or less, because if you go too far pulling them down, you're going to start getting into the HDR type look as you make other changes. So I don't usually go further than a -75. And then I pull my shadows up. And depending on how dark everything is in the foreground or on the subject that I'm looking at, I will do about the same to my shadows. I can pull my shadows all the way up to 100 and not really get too excited about it because that doesn't change a whole lot for me. If you have a JPEG image, that's going to make a difference, because when you start pulling your shadows up and your highlights, pushing your highlights down on a JPEG, you're going to start to see a lot more noise. Same thing with your exposure. If you start pushing your exposure past that 1.0, you're going to start seeing a lot more noise. So I've got my highlights down, I've got my shadows up. That's where I start. The next thing is kind of cool. So if you have a Windows, you're going to hold down the Alt button. And if you have a Mac, you're going to hold down the Option button. And I'm going to hold down the Option button, and I'm going to pull my blacks. Notice it turned my screen white. I'm going to pull my black slider to the left. As I do that, you're going to start to see some color show up. And that color is telling me where I'm going to have true blacks. So if I pull it all the way down, everything that you can see right now is going to be black. So I'm going to let go of my keys, and you can see that I lost a lot of detail down here and right here and over here. If you lose the detail in some images, that might be great. In some images, it might not be great. So if I hold down my Option key or my Alt key again, pull these back, I want to have contrast, but I don't want to lose the detail in this image. So I'm going to pull it back just a little bit. All right. Now I can still see the streets. I can still see the lights in this window, and I can still see the lines on the Gucci, and I can see the palm trees down here. I'm going to do the same thing on my white slider. So I'm going to hold down my Alt or my Option button, and I'm going to click on the whites. It's going to turn my screen black, and I'm going to pull up. So anything that you see in color is going to be really, really bright. If it turns white, it's blown out. So if you look at this sign right here, that white is definitely blown out. And you can take it back down and you can use the brush tool, and I'll show you that in a minute. So you want to get your whites where you want them. You can kind of, you can play with it as you go.
There's another way that I've been doing this is just hit, well, I got Windows, just hit the J key, just press it. And then in your histogram, you'll get two
Yep.
little, well, why is it not doing it?
Well, you can also, if you click this, remember I said that your histogram up top has these these triangles.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, and that'll show you where your blacks and the reds are overblown. Yeah.
But if you use the Option or Alt key on your computer and you slide, not only can you see where the solid black is, which is what that histogram triangle is showing you, but you can also see that you're starting to get some dark shading. You haven't lost it yet, but you're getting there. And this allows you to adjust the contrast a little bit more than just seeing it on the histogram.
Okay, so I got Windows, so I hit the Alt key.
Yep.
Is that right?
Alt
Oh, wait a
key.
minute, I got to get in develop. That was my problem. For some reason, I wasn't in develop module. Okay. Okay, so hit the Alt key.
Yep.
And then under basic, we're gonna do what? Drag the whites.
Yep, you can drag your whites to the right and you can drag your blacks to the left.
Whites to the right. Okay, now I just see them start to come in.
Yep.
And what am I looking for here?
You're looking for color. So if it turns white, it's completely blown out. If it's yellow or green or red or blue, the white isn't blown out. That means there's still detail there. If it blows out, you have no detail. You look, if this sign was as big as this building and it was totally white, it would be James Mitchell's pink flamingo from the meeting. Bruce is laughing. You missed that. It was entertaining.
I chuckled, but I wouldn't laugh too loud. So
Where do I want to set this then? When I'm holding this Alt key and dragging this, what am I?
Well, look, you know the signs are going to be blown out because they're white, but you don't want the building to be blown out, because if I blow the building out, if I blow my building out and I let go, I'm losing all my detail. But the other thing I'm doing is I'm creating a halo around this building. And I don't know how well you guys can see it, but it's pretty strong right here.
Yeah, I can see it.
Right? So if you, like I said, always make changes on the left side, because you can always go back and slide this a little bit more, but you don't want white. White means you're losing your detail. Now, maybe that's your goal on the particular picture, is to have pure white, and maybe that's not blown out, so to speak, in the image that you're working on. But on this image, I'm going to fix these signs later. So on this image, I just want to make sure that my windows are bright, but I don't want them to blow out, because I don't want to lose all this really cool detail. And I don't like this halo right here.
Okay, so just go ahead and adjust this the way you would do it. I want to see what it looks like.
All right, so I'm going to pull my whites, and I'm going to do more later because I can still see that halo. Let me make this a little bit darker. So I would stop right here. For this particular set of tools, I would leave it alone, because I'm going to do more to it with a different tool. The texture tool is another tool that Lightroom recently added. I don't remember, did that come out last year, Bruce?
it's been on there for several years.
I feel like we've had it for a while, but it was a great addition to the clarity tool. So let me take a step back. So I've got my highlights pulled down, and I did that because I want to be able to use my mask to do more color and more editing around specific areas in the picture, but I want everything pulled down so that I can adjust it in smaller areas. And and I pulled my shadows up so I could see the detail. And then I adjusted my whites and my blacks using the sliders. And you can do it however you want to do it. I have used these triangle tools for a long, long time. And I can show you a really good example of what they're great for, what I used them for during COVID, during my quarantine project. But I get really close to where I want the image here. And then if you use the backslash key, you should be able to toggle between, come on.
Before and after.
You should be able to, there we go. So that's what I started with. That's my raw image, and that's where I'm at now.
No, I got all dumped out here somehow.
So
Be-
for me,
Before you leave those tools, there's something I want to mention.
yeah, go for it.
I think everybody is reasonably familiar with that auto button. It's right. Oh, you can't see my finger. Don't push it. What auto is Lightroom's idea of how the image should be adjusted, and it uses AI. There's a way you can apply auto to individual sliders, and I will do that sometimes on whites and blacks. Put the cursor on the grommet for the blacks, for instance. Double click on that one on the black.
On the black?
Yeah, we'll start there.
So I think you're saying put my cursor on the word black and then double click.
Yeah, or the grommet, either one. Anyway, put it on the grommet. That's the little thing in the middle. And then hold down the shift key and double click on that. That performs the auto for blacks only. And you'll notice that it pretty well sets the black point. If you look at your histogram, it's not bad. And then you do the same thing on the whites.
Okay, but what did you start out by saying? You said you don't just come in and click auto automatically?
No, I don't use auto. It does things that I would probably never do, but you can apply the auto technique to individual sliders by holding down the shift key and then double clicking on the grommet.
Yeah, okay, I got that part. But yeah, what I've been doing, I just been starting with the auto and then saying, I want to change this, that, and the other thing.
It's all right. It's a way to start, as long as you understand that you're probably not going to end with that. But
okay.
So I just used, instead of clicking the auto, I just clicked on each one individually doing that.
yeah, you can do each one of them, and
Yeah.
that in theory should be the same results as if you clicked on the auto button. You'd have to do some comparisons, but
Okay.
anyway, it's just another way to skin the cat.
So I was mentioning at the beginning the difference between shooting raw and shooting JPEG and the options that you have. Let me turn this down so I'm not so shiny. If you shoot in RAW, you will have options here to select camera profile colors and Adobe profile colors. So I tend with my motocross stuff to lean towards landscape because it gives me a much more colorful, sharp, vibrant look. But Adobe landscape is very different than Canon landscape. Same with the faithful and, you know, your standard, they all give you different colors. So if you're going to shoot in RAW, you also have this option to start playing with for your changes on your on your white balance, it'll change the sharpening. You know, there's auto things that happen in each one of those camera settings in a raw image. And if you're shooting in JPEG, you're stuck with whatever you've got your camera set with to an extent. Like if you bring it in as a JPEG, for instance, this one's a JPEG. So notice that that profile option is here, but the only two options I have primarily are color and monochrome. There is a browse option, and then I get these really fun things to play with that are basically presets, and I can pick from them. But ultimately, I've got color, black and white, and then a whole bunch of presets. So that's one of the differences between shooting JPEG, shooting RAWs. You can change your camera's color profile. If the other thing that you have if you're shooting a JPEG is your white balance is as shot, auto, or custom. So when I shoot in JPEG at the track, if it's sunny outside, I shoot sunny and I don't change it unless it goes to cloudy, and then I change it. Because when I come home, there's so many different places and so many different light angles because I'm using ambient light that I will make a preset based on where I'm at in the track and then just batch edit that group. And I don't worry too much about how accurate it is because the people that look at these pictures just don't know enough about photography to know that the color is wrong as long as the reds and blues and Kawasaki's green and gas and Honda are red, and that's good, right? So that's the big that's one of the big differences between the raw capability and the JPEG capability. There's many others, as I've already mentioned a few, but the ability to change the color, the camera settings, the white balance, color options is one of the big ones. So, and you're just going to get so many different things by changing those. All right, so moving along, we are at 8 o'clock. So we're not going to get through this whole thing. Texture, clarity, and dehaze. And then we've also got the contrast and the exposure slider that we haven't, I mean, the exposure is kind of self-explanatory, right? So you can change your exposures. Contrast does a couple of things. Contrast will make the whites brighter. It will make your darks darker, but it also adds saturation or takes saturation away. So if I slide it all the way over, it oversaturates.
Yeah.
And if I pull it down, it flattens it and it pulls the saturation down. So again, little adjustments at a time are better than big adjustments because it does change everything. I like to pull my vibrancy up. Vibrancy doesn't affect skin tones unless you get really crazy. Or it thinks, or the AI in Lightroom thinks that the skin tone is something else. But typically, if you want to make things vibrant around your person, you can adjust the vibrancy, and unless you get really crazy, his skin is changing a little bit as I get kind of nuts over here, but for the most part, it's just changing the color around him, not on his skin. Whereas if I change the saturation, it's affecting the skin tones too. And maybe you want that, maybe you don't. And you can fight these sliders all day long. So little changes are better than big changes. Texture is, I use texture for different things, but one of the things that it's really cool for, and this is where you would come in here and use your select sky, is you could add texture to just the sky. And you can go crazy and pull it and see where it ends up and look at it. Or you can just do a little bit. If you drag the clarity over, you're also going to get more halos, and you're going to get really a sharp look to it. It's also going to make it darker. And you can see like it's pulling my clouds apart as I pull the clarity up. Whereas if I do that with the texture, it pulls it apart a little bit, but it doesn't separate them. And if you're doing skin tones, the texture tool is much safer on skin tones than your clarity, because the clarity blurs things as you go down. All right,
Can we jump down one, because it has something to do with the up above. If we go down to tone curve.
yeah.
Okay, I'm looking for it on yours, not on, because, okay, go down HSL, okay, there we go. Now, okay, on the regions,
Yep.
let's just say, for example, let's use shadows.
Okay.
Because you slid your shadow all the way to the right. So, and I've been trying to figure that one out over the one above. What pulls the difference there?
Well,
because I noticed when you're playing with it down here, it lightens up the street, and that's what I would have done. But that's what I would have been thinking the slider at the top would have done.
So this tool up here is your basic tool. This one is going to give you more things to play with. So, and this tool is also in is a basic addition in Photoshop, because you can pull down. And I tend not to use the sliders. Where did my mouse go? Front row.
I don't have any.
So basically, it's taking, instead of just a section, it's taking the whole thing then, correct? As opposed to certain areas. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
So this is, if you have whites that are blown out and you want to pull them down, you can do it here.
Right.
You want to set these up here. This is just going to add more. And you can do it in one place or the other. For instance, if I put my shadows and my whites and my blacks and my highlights all back to nothing up here.
Yeah.
And
I get the curve here. I was just trying to figure out the sliders down below, because sometimes I'll go to that, but I've just not been able to figure out what was the difference between in the basic and in the tone curve, like shadows, for example. I'm just picking on that one.
It's really just that the tone curve is just an additional tool to these up here.
Okay.
You're duplicating, but you're also giving yourself more flexibility.
Okay.
And I do use both. But the other nice thing about this tool, and if you set it, if you play with it and you don't like it, you can just double click on adjust, and it will set you back to where you were.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need these sliders, because the sliders are just moving that curve, right?
Okay.
So you can just click on this one here, get rid of your sliders, and just play with your curve.
Okay.
And that's going to do the same thing. But the really cool thing that I use the tonal curve more for is my colors.
Right.
You know, but then you've got two other color options. You've got the HSL color.
Mm-hmm.
Now your color grading, which, if you're not good with a color wheel, you can really screw up your image.
Yeah, I'm not good with that, but I was just trying to figure out why there was two sets of like shadow or highlights or whatnot, because I played with the curve, but I'm just trying to still figure out why we have two sets of those down, on the page.
And if you have a person in the picture that has like a really weird shadow across their face, you can use the brush tool and pull some of the shadows out, and then you can come down to the tonal curve and you can pull the shadows out even further. And in Lightroom, without pushing over to Photoshop, you can almost get rid of a full shadow on somebody's face if they've got their hand right here, or if they've got their hand here and the shadow falls across the nose and that's not where you want it. You can almost eliminate the entire shadow in Lightroom alone. But it really takes some playing. The other thing you can do is, in some of these tools, you have this little dot right here. And if you click on that dot so that it turns white, and then you go to someplace on your image, let's say we'll go down here to the street, click and hold down your left mouse button and then pull it up. And I have it on color right now, but it's, number one, it's looking at where am I in the group, right? So let me go back here. So if I click up here, let me click this tool. If I click up here where I'm kind of bright and I move it, notice my light slider is moving,
Okay.
right? If I click over here where it's dark, now it's moving my shadow slider. So you can pull things, and I use terminology, you can pull and push and pull your shadows, your darks, your lights to kind of get things where you want them. I like really punchy images, but you know, it's not for everybody, clearly. So lots of sliders. And as you get more familiar with how you like things to look, you'll get more comfortable with the sliders. I do want to show you guys one more thing with this masking tool. So, and then we're going to call it a night and we're going to have to do another session, but we'll have more, I'll have room for questions. So this image, I've got a preset for this image. We'll use this one. All right, so one, I want to crop this a little bit because I don't particularly like the branch on the bottom of the picture, but I also don't have any sun rays, and I really want the sun rays in this picture. And this is where my pen tablet comes in handy because I don't like to edit with a mouse. But if I come over to my masking tool and click on my brush, and then I've got my feather up all the way, I'm going to turn my flow down to about 78, 79, 80, my density down to about 70. And then I am just going to start drawing.
So what was density? What
Density
was-
and flow are basically like how much ink is coming through.
Okay.
Okay. So I've got this sun over here and it's pretty blown out in the picture. And I really wanted rays to come through this barn, but I didn't really get what I wanted. Oops. You have to be careful not to, if you accidentally grab your spot that you started at, you can hit Control Z and it'll undo whatever you just did. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but I like pushed on where and it moved my sun rays. So I am making my own sun rays in Lightroom by just pulling from where that sun is poking through. And then let me do this. So that's what I just drew. Not perfect. It's a good start, right? I can add to it if I need to. And I did get some on my guy, and that's okay because I'll fix that. But then I'm gonna pull up some yellows. I'm going to bring up my highlights. It's okay that I'm blowing that out. I'm really okay with the trees being blown out there because I know the sun is coming through. I'm going to pull up my shadows and some texture, and then I can change colors by moving this on my hue. I don't necessarily want to change colors, and maybe I'm just a little bit too yellow. Maybe right about there. A little too much there. Okay, so I have this, and it's not perfect, but it's a good start. Now I got some on his face, and I got a little bit on his shirt. So I'm going to subtract from my mask, and I'm going to use my brush again. But I'm going to resize my brush, and I'm still using the 100% feather, and I'm just going to subtract from where I don't want the light that I just added so that he doesn't look like I painted him yellow. And I'm just going to color that area. And then you can toggle on and off with your overlay here. And you can see I've still got a little bit of green on him, but it's not bad and it doesn't look super overdone. So now I've got more sun rays, and you can play with that and get it where you want it, but you can paint on your image. And it's, I said, it's not, I was playing with this earlier to see how close I could get it because I don't do this very often. to play with stuff. But you can really get some impressive looks, and you can ruin an image. But the nice thing is Lightroom is non-destructive. So whatever changes you make, they're only applying to this virtual file that you have, because the original isn't being changed. And that's the really big important thing about Lightroom, is it doesn't touch the original image. It's just, remember the Lightroom assistant that you tell to import your picture, he or she is just really putting them in a file cabinet in where you wanted them and keeping track of where they are. Well, she's also keeping track of all your changes and cataloging them. You're not actually changing the original image.
And it's all going right into that XMP file.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you say she's keeping track?
Yeah.
He or she.
He or she. I added the he or she. Yep. Got to be.
They are keeping track.
One thing you could have done when you had the light rays on your subject, when you click on the subtract, go ahead and click on it, then select subject.
Yep.
And that would have automatically subtracted everything on him, and you
Yep.
wouldn't even have to paint.
That's true. So lots of really cool stuff. So we got through most of these tools here, and we got through these groups of sliders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up another class tonight for next month, and we'll just run this again next month with some more tools, and we'll go more in depth on the tone curve and the color grading, detail. Play with these things,
Yeah.
use them.
Yeah, a couple of those I haven't even begun to figure out what they do.
Well,
So
the mask tool was huge, because that's always been my Achilles heel with it. So
I came into this club in 2014, and I was using Lightroom, but had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And Bruce, I don't remember what year you taught that Lightroom class at the library. I want to say it was 15 or 16.
15,
And
2015.
that really kicked things off for me and got me more interested in Lightroom, because I finally had an understanding of how things were working, because I'm not a reader, and I didn't know anybody else that knew how to use Lightroom. So getting into the club and having that happen was fantastic. And then from there, I went to a seminar, and then from there I started using Kelby One, and then I got into Photoshop more, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos to emulate stuff, and it's good to have the files. I asked a lot of questions of other members that were using Photoshop. Now I use InDesign, and that's a whole nother beast. So a lot of stuff that you can do, a lot to unpack in this software though. So if you have any questions, ask.
yeah, there's one but I'll give you a holler one of these days, because it's on the technical side of it. It kind of got me baffled on a couple things, but I'll go over that with you on a one-off.
That'll work.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up for tonight. I'll set up the next one.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hey,
Sounds
thank you.
good.
How far did you get of what you thought you'd get?
About halfway.
Okay.
It's always how it goes.
Yeah, it's all good. No worries.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yep. Talk to you later.
All right.